Hi, I'm Barbara from Valdosta Studio Imagination. Welcome to my studio. What I'm doing today is I'm casting some molds, and I thought I'd make a little video to show you guys how it gets from the clay to the form to the kiln. And so here we go. First of all, these are the molds. They're made out of plaster of Paris, and they act like a sponge and absorb the moisture in the clay. The clay is a liquid clay called slip. I've got a gallon of it here. It's all been thinned down and ready to start casting. If it's too thick, it won't go. When it goes in the mold, it will not fill up all the detail. You'll have gaps and everything in there. But before you cast the mold, you've got to prepare it. You've got to clean out the inside of it. Make sure a bug or something hasn't crawled inside of it. Like this one, it looks like it did. This is the turkey platter. I've been wanting to get some things cast for Thanksgiving, but most of you know I've had some surgery on my foot and I haven't been able to. So I'm going to dust this one. I've got to be careful. If I were to scratch the inside of this mold, it would, when I cast it, it would leave that scratch mark, and that's something extra that I would have to clean off. When I say clean, that means preparing the clay. After it's cast, where the two pieces of the mold comes together, there's going to be what is called a seam line. And that seam line has to be cleaned off so it's not noticeable. And you put it back together. I'm going to do it this way, and this side out. This way. There we go. I'm going to put it back together. I'm doing it this way. If I flipped it over, did it the other way, as I pulled the band up, it would drop more things inside the mold. And you want to make sure it's tight, because if it's not, it will pour out the side, and I've had that happen before. It makes a big mess. So, I'm going to pour this one first. Alrighty, let's see here. I used to have casting tables that would pump the clay out. So this is the old-fashioned way. Now I'm going to pour it in here, but I'm actually going to move it around. The reason I'm doing that, if you pour just straight into the mold in one section, it creates what is called a hard spot. And that's hard to cover with sometimes with your glaze. Sometimes you'll get a piece that you're glazing or underglazing, and no matter what you do, it just seems like it just won't take the paint. Well, that's called a hard spot, and it's usually created when the mold is poured. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Now, once I get this poured, I'm going to do this. I'm going to shake it a little bit, because this is flat. I'm going to make sure all the edges and everything got filled up. I'm going to go ahead and pour another one. This one is a little ring dish. I'm going to do a few different things with this one. The first one, I'm just going to pour a regular one. As you can see on this particular mold, the handle, that place where you put your ring, is poured in a separate section. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pour the handle first. Now this handle is poured solid, which means I'm going to pour the clay in and I'm not going to pour it out. I'm going to put this in a smaller bucket so I can control it a little bit. It's so hard to handle. I don't know whether I mentioned it, but clay in its liquid form is called slip. So that's what I'm actually pouring with. I'll fill the mold up all the way to the top. Now, as the mold absorbs the moisture out of the clay, it's going to start sinking down, and you'll see your casting along the edge. Now, you don't have to fill it back up unless it goes down below what's called the spare. The spare is just part of the mold, not part of the ceramic greenware. There's your spider. But this part up here, this is what forms the greenware. Greenware is what it's called before it's fired. When y'all go into the room to pick out what you're doing, that's called bisque. That simply means it's been fired one time. But before it's fired, it's called greenware. And the greenware, of course, you can see the pig here, but this part up here, that's called the spare. You have that because the mold does sink down. Now, you never have to refill it unless it drops below the spare, because it's hard to tell how thick it is. Once it, if you keep constantly filling it up, you can't really see the thickness very well. A lot of people pour by time. You can't pour by time. You've got to check each mold, because every mold is different. And if the mold's been played several times and there's a lot of moisture in it, it's going to take longer for it to set up. So one day at a time it might take 10 or 15 minutes, next time it may take 30 minutes. So you cannot pour by time. I'm out of piggy banks, so I'm going to pour us one for somebody to paint. Put it together. So, now see, there's not much of a spare on this one. That's very, very small. Now, this one, which I think that's doubled up, see, it's got a pretty long spare, so you don't have to constantly keep an eye on it. Because if you let it drop down below the spare, then this part of the piece is going to be real thin. It will be thinner than that part, and that can cause some problems during the firing process. There again, I'm going to try to do this one back and forth to break up that hard spot, because that would be right on top of the pig. Now as you reach the top of actually it's the bottom of the spare, you want to slow down a little bit so all the air can get out. Because if you trap air, you'll get little air bubbles in the top of it, or the bottom of the piece. Because we're doing it upside down, remember. I'll show y'all, when these drop a little bit, I'll show you what it looks like. I don't want to pour too fast. Now, this is the pig that I poured, and just put this a little bit closer. I don't know whether you can see it, but see how it's sunk down a little bit? Now I'm going to have to refill this one because it's not been in there. I know it's just paper thin right now. Like I said, the spare on this one was just so small. You don't have much leeway here, so this one's going to have to be filled all the way up. Now the plate is done a little differently. You want a plate to be solid all around on the outside, but you want to have a little rim on it. So this one, I'll let it sit till it's solid. I'll dump it out, but just as I'm looking in the mold and I'm seeing the inside of the plate, I'm going to turn it right back up so the clay fills up that little place between the rim of the plate and the bottom. Because we do want this solid. You don't want openings all up in there when you wash it, water gets up in there. So you have to think about all that kind of stuff. Every one of these is done a little differently. Now remember, this is the spare, so it's not part of the, actually this is the stem of the mushroom, but you cut into the spare. That's why you don't want to constantly refill it. It's really kind of hard. And then you look and see how thick it is, which is right there. Can y'all tell? It'll fall down. When it gets the thickness you want, which this is probably about, I'd say 1/4 of an inch thick, you pour the excess back out. Don't just dump it all at one time, because as the clay's coming out, air's got to get in. If you turn it up and dump it all at one time, and some of them you can, there's an exception to everything, it'll pull the clay away from the wall and collapse it. Now this is a round plate. Now this one is it's supposed to be solid all the way around. I don't really need to test it. When I pour it out, when I start seeing this part of the plate, I'm just going to turn it right back up so to let the clay run back down into it and keep this solid, and then you still have a lip to it. Now I've got a big opening. Let's see if y'all can see what I've done. But see, now I've let that clay run back down in it. Well, you can see on this side, see it's running out. I don't want this to be hollow, so I've got that excess clay that's going to finish filling that back up, and then we'll have a solid plate with just a rim. Do most all plates that way, but there again, there are exceptions to that. This is the turkey plate. Let's see, how am I going to do this? This thing's kind of heavy for me now, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it on the boards and flip it that way. Instead of trying to pick it up and put it in the bucket. There, dump it out. And then turn it back up. So the excess clay falls back in. And then we'll have a nice rim. I think I'll go ahead and sit right over here. looks good. Now the little pig, I'm going to test it by cutting into the spare, lifting it out. I'm going to get a piece so you can kind of see. Okay, this is how thick that pig is right now. Now that's still not very thick for a hollow pig like that because it's easy to crush. But this is what I'm talking about. That's a much smaller mold than the ones I've been pouring out, but it's still not ready. The mold is old, it's dry, but it's just old. What I'll do, I'll take the strap off and using, this is called a Lucy. It was developed back in the 60s. And I think the lady's name was Lucy, so they named the mold trimmer after her. But you use this to take the excess clay. It doesn't hurt the mold. I also use a fiddling knife like this. I use that a lot. Just have to be a little more careful with it. Now, even though I've taken this edge off, I've got to loosen or take this off right here because it's still tight to the mold. So I'm going to loosen around like that. Now on this particular one, I've done it so many times, I know you don't normally tear your spare off because that can cause hairline cracks, but the way this particular, and like I said, every mold's different. This one I know I can. But after I tear that spare off, then I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to come in here and take the clay all the way around. And press it into the mold. By doing that, you're not going to have any problems with any cracking. Lift the mold off like that. I'm going to do a little bit more work around here. Now if I were to leave this in here like this, as it continues to shrink around this bowl, it will crack. So what I do, I put the mold back on, flip it upside down, and take that off. See what I mean? It's got this, and of course it's going to shrink up around it, and it's going to cause a hairline crack. So now this is safe to leave till tomorrow. Take this excess off right here. That's where it leaked. Remember I had it started leaking on me? And I put it aside till tomorrow. Now this is the turkey platter, a heavy one. There you go. Take these off. Another special tool I use. It's called a putty knife. They come in all sizes. It works great for this too. But there again, you want to be careful not to, to damage your mold. You do the same way as I did the smaller one. I'll loosen it. I'm putting my fingers down at the bottom so I don't accidentally cut into the plate. I know it's hard to see. Okay, do this. It's clinging to the top of the mold, which is good. So that's all I got to do is flip it over and pull like so. Let's see, we've got a turkey platter. That's going to be pretty. I haven't poured this one in a while. This one is one that always would crack on me right in here, around the head of it. There's no cracks on it. It looks looking good. So this is safe to leave till tomorrow now. Okay. Now the rest of them, I'm going to just take the putty knife and get the excess off. I don't really have to do anything. So what I'm doing here, I'm just pulling this in like that. That just helps release it, so I don't have to worry about it. Those little ones. The only other one I really need to is the sunflower bowl, which is over here. Like I said, the bowls and plates are the main things that you need to get out. And you know, there's others too. And after you pour them a million times like I have, you know which ones they are. But that's, you know, well, you can't pour by time or anything. This is a pretty bowl. And don't forget, you guys can come in and do canvas too. Just let me know, you know, what you'd like to do so I can get the canvases traced for you and ready and prepared. I do have some already done, but okay. Now you can see about the rim. See how I've got it here? This is still real wet. So I know it's not going to come out right now, so I'm going to let it sit a little while longer and then loosen it up. I poured that one kind of late. There, let's see. This one I'm just going to do like that, just to get that. That's fine. This is the little pig that I poured the very first thing. Go ahead and just trim it up. My dog's barking. If y'all been in here, you've heard Shotzi before. This one I'm going to just trim. This is the spare that I was talking about when we first started. Get that one out. If you ever get a piece of bisque, that's what it's called after it's fired, it rattles. It's because I dropped some clay in it, inside of it, and closed it up. Now this one doesn't have to come out today, but it's ready to, so I'm just going to go ahead and take it out. This is just a little bitty ladybug. But now you see the line that goes around it? That's where the section of the mold comes together. That's got to be cleaned off. Now this right now is still wet greenware. I'm going to wait till tomorrow and let it dry a little bit until it's leather hard, and then I'll take that seam line off. Good morning. The molds have set overnight now and they're ready to come out. Now last night this mold was not quite ready to come out, and to keep it from cracking I covered it in plastic so it stayed wet. If I hadn't covered it in plastic, it probably would have cracked like this as it shrunk around the mold. So I'm going to let this one sit a little longer. Now the turkey platter that I poured will stay in this part of the mold because there's nothing to keep it from cracking because it's sitting in this part of the mold. So it can shrink all it wants, but it keeps its shape. If you take it out too soon, it'll lose its shape. I'll warp on you a little bit. So, the first one I'm going to take out. Shotzi, hush. Y'all, that's my little dog Shotzi. She barks all the time. She's 16 years old. And she can't see, and she doesn't recognize me right now. Shotzi. It's just me. Come on. And Okay, this is a ring dish. This right here. Now this particular mold was in 2 sections. So I've got to trim it. This. A little bit more than that. Trimmed up good. And this part. Now, you see there's air inside this one. And if I were to put this on like that, the air couldn't get out. So what would happen, this would blow up. So when I put these two together, I put a vent hole right here. Sure it's clear in the back. That's why sometimes when you see something that's got a, I'm going to score it a little bit like this. Score this side. Okay. Now this is the slip, the clay that I poured the molds with. But this particular slip, I just poured it in here and left it open so it would get thicker. You want this to be real thick. This is too thick to cast with, though. You would have to thin it to cast with it. I'm going to just drop it in there like that. Now the secret is to let that clay ooze out of the side like that. You can see it's oozing out. You leave that for a little bit because as it starts to dry, it'll kind of go back in. So we've got that excess, and when it dries a little bit, I'm just going to take a damp brush and go back over it. But now the rest of them, I don't really have anything else to put together. Well, I do too. I have an alligator. I'm not going to take all these out, but I just wanted to show you that. Now, as far as taking something out, sometimes it needs a little bit of help. This is a rubber mallet. You can tell I've had it for years. And what you do, you tap the edge of the mold like so. Now this one probably isn't quite ready, but you can see how it's beginning to pull from the edge of the mold right there. Be careful. Yeah, see, it's ready to come out now. Lift it out. And there's the sunflower bowl. Isn't that pretty? So I'll set that aside. There's not much cleaning to do on bowls like this. You've got that little ridge there that comes right off with your finger. On one like that, there's very little to do. Set it aside and let it finish drying. Now this one I took out yesterday. Now you see the seam line? That needs to come off before it gets any drier. This is what they call the leather hard stage. It's not completely dry where it produces a real fine dust, which is not good to breathe. But you take a tool, anything sharp just like this, and you follow along. Now you see you've got this little dip here, so you want to kind of put your detail back in. Clean the back up a little bit. This is an easy one to clean. There's a lot of them that takes a lot more work than this. Especially the more detail that's on it, the more work it takes to clean it. And then you simply take a damp sponge. Just take a damp sponge like this. Go back over it. Sometimes I'll use my finger. Keep it clean. Now you have to be careful with the sponge, but careful cleaning it. You don't want to literally wash off like I could wash off all the stuff that's on here. Don't want to do that though. You see? You get it to where you don't see the seam line anymore. On the back side, I'll just... And like I said, if you wait too long and the clay gets completely dry, be sure to wear a mask before cleaning it. And that's it. Now on this one, wow, this is sort of gotten dry. See how the kind of going off a little bit? It's the shine's going off of it a little bit. Now you can take this. And if you have to, you can take your tool. See right there, it didn't cover very good right there, so you just simply take a tool and put a little clay in it. I might use this end of the... Just like that. Just run your sponge around, your finger around it, or your sponge. Got to be careful. There's a little, there's a rose on this one. You don't want to destroy it. And that's it till it dries a little bit more, and then I'll finish taking the seam line off of it. And this one, the same thing. I'm gonna finish taking the rest of these molds off. Thanks for joining me.